Welcome to this video where we will be looking at the for loop this time around. Right. So in our previous videos, we've looked at the while loop, the do while loop, and now we are on the for loop. Right. So what do we have for the for loop? We have some concepts we have to take note of. So the first point we are going to look at is that the for loop is ideal for performing a known number of iterations, right? So with regards to do and then do while and then while loop, these loops are usually used when you don't know the exact number of times you want your iteration to run, right? But with a for loop, you have in mind that this is the exact number of iterations I want to perform. So you can set your start and your end, and it is going to deliver the same thing. All right. So using the for loop can help you when you know your exact number of iteration. It will be the best in some cases, right? Then we have in general, there are two categories of loops. There are the conditional loops, which we will know to be the while loop and then the do while loop, and then a count controlled loop, which this time around is exactly the for loop. All right. So we see a conditional loop executes as long as a particular condition exists, right? So if our condition being checked or expression being checked in the while loop is quite true for our statement to execute, then we'll keep on executing until that thing is false for us to break out of the while or the do while loop. Then we have a count control that executes for a particular number of times, right? So what do we have? We have the format of a for loop. Then again, we have a very simple format. We have a for, you open brackets, and then we are taking in initialization, a test, which you can also say a condition or something. Then we have the last parameter being the update, or in some cases you can say the step. All right, so in this case the update is going to be our counter value. Then we have, if you only have one line of code, you can just put that one down without bringing curly braces, right? So in general, the for loop will have this structure, right? For, you have some initialization value, a test condition, and an update or a step. Then you can have your lines of code in here. Then you end with your curly braces, right? So let's dive into our IDE and then do some stuff with the for loop. Right. So this is what we are going to try first. We are going to be outputting some values from our for loop. All right, so let's do something like during iteration 1 we can output hello from iteration 1, hello from iteration 2, hello from iteration 3 to the very end of the value we want to stop. Right, so we are going to have our variables x and y. So our x is going to be 1, our y is going to be 5. So now let's call our for, and for the first thing we are taking is going to be our initialization. So this time we are going to use x, our test. We are going to check for the number being less than our end value or equal to our end value. Then we can do a one-step update. So we can do x, and these parameters are separated with semicolon, right? So we can do for x is less than or equal to the ending value, where we have a variable 5 for that. Then we can increment our value by 1 using our increment operator. All right, so our initialization variable is x, which is 1. Then we are checking if our x is less than or equal to our ending value. And then this will be the step for our iteration. All right, so we can come down here and then print out these values of x, right? So let's add some space, and we can even do hello from iteration, then we put x here, right? Then we can do end line here, right? So this is going to give us hello from iteration 1 on our first iteration till we get to the last iteration. So let's run this and see what we get. So we get hello from iteration 1, hello from iteration 2, hello from iteration 3, all the way to 5. So whenever this thing runs, it gets incremented using this particular step we have here. All right, so you can use the increment value, or you can do x equals x plus 1, right? This also works. It has to give us the same output as before. So let's run this and we expect to see the same thing. All right, so let's say this time around we want to increase the step to 2. All right, what you can do is just change this one to 2. Then you have every time the iteration runs, it updates x value by 2. All right, so we should have 1, 3, and then 5. So hello from iteration 1, hello from iteration 3, hello from iteration 5. Exactly. So this same thing, instead of doing this, you can choose plus equals 2, and this is also going to be the same thing, right? So we expect to see the same output when we run this. All right, it works. So now with our example where we print numbers from 1 to 20, we can do that with the for loop. And in fact, the for loop is a perfect loop for printing something like that. So we set x to 1 and we can set this to 20. All right, let's try something a little bit different now. So right now, instead of printing from 1 to 20, we can print from 20 all the way to 1, right? So our start, instead of x, is going to be y. Then we check y. We check if y is greater or equal to x, right? So this time around, we are moving from the greater number to a smaller number, from 20 to 1, right? So instead of incrementing this, we have to decrease the value of y. All right, so let's say if we are to do y plus plus, this loop is going to be an infinite loop, because from 20 it will keep on adding 1 to our y, which is always never going to be getting to our end condition, which is 1, right? So let's try this, and we should be having we should be printing y this time around, and then we should expect to see an infinite loop. All right, so here we are going to stop this, and then instead of incrementing this, we are going to decrement this using minus minus, right? So let's run this, and this time around we hello from iteration 20, 19, all the way to 1, and then we stop, right? That's pretty much it. So let's try something different, that's outputting only even numbers from these things, right? So let's take away our statement here, and this time around we are going to have multiple statements, so we get our body structure, right? So we want to print out even numbers, and we've spoken about this in our previous video that if you want to output even numbers, you check for the remainder, because an even number divided by 2 should always have a remainder of 0, right? And how do you check if the remainder of a variable divided by 2 is having a remainder of 0, right? We use the modulus operator. So let's get into it and go. So if y modulus 2 equals 0, yes, so if the left hand side equals 0, right, we want to output this, the value of y, to the screen. Then we can put some space here, right? So that should be it for printing the even numbers from 20 all the way to 1, right? So let's run this, and we expect 20, 18, 16, yes, all the way to 2. So these are the even numbers in the range we have here, right? Okay, so that's pretty much it. You can try to work around the for loop and try something new with it, right? So let's have a look at some other things we can do with for loop. So back here, what do we have here? Using multiple statements in the initialization and update expression. All right, so in here, what we have here, on the normal, you should have just one initialization variable in here, right? But then you can also do 2 of them. All right, and then you have one condition here, and then you can increment this, and this will work perfectly. So let's try running this and see what we are going to get. So we have y, x, and y. So let's do x, y, and then we can say x equals 1, then y also equals 1. Then we check if x is less than or equal to a certain value, right? So we do 5. Then we can increment the value of x. And so we are just going to be printing the addition of these numbers, right? So we can say x plus y will be x plus y. Just that, and we can do end line, right? So looking at our update condition, you get to realize that it's only the x value that is being incremented, right? So the y value actually stays the same, and this is actually what we need to break out of this for loop, right? So let's run this. We have an error in the code. Where exactly? Line 9. All right, so instead of using comma, it has to be semicolon. Yep. So let's run this again. Then we have 1 plus 1 equals 2. 2 plus 1 equals 3. We can give some space here and see the output well. All right, so these are the x values and these are the y values. Y stays the same, we are not incrementing it, right? But I think we can increment the value of y by saying by saying y plus plus just right here. So let's run this and see. Yes, and then we update the value of y, so we get 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4, 3 plus 3 is 6, and so on, right? Yes, so this can be very fun to work with. So speaking of this, sometimes using your for loop, you can choose to omit some of your parameters here, right? So first of all, let's try using this side. We are going to take away this value, the x value, and then we say let's just output the value of x, right? So let's just do this end line. All right, it works. So in that case, you have to initialize this value, right? You have to give it a value so it knows where it is starting. Then we are saying x is less than or equal to 5 and x plus plus. So you are using x, so automatically it knows whatever should be here should be your x, right? So let's print this and we get to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So the same thing, you can choose to have this here and omit your plus plus from here. All right, but then you can't have a situation where you have x plus plus here and then again another x plus plus. It shouldn't be. So let's run this and see if it should work. All right, so it's actually working, right? It's quite interesting. But then if you want to increment it, if you want to use something like this, you have to be sure of what you are actually doing, right? Right, so you are not going to get an error, but then be sure of how you are going to use something like this. But then you can still do this and then take away this side from the code, right? And then this is also going to work perfectly, right? So let's run this and we get to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as usual. And then you can also choose to omit your condition, but keep in mind that if you take away the condition is what we use to break out of the loop, right? So if you are taking it out, then definitely this is going to be an infinite loop, right? If only this is going to run, which I'm sure it's going to run. So let's see. Yes, so it's running and it's definitely going to be an infinite loop because there is no condition being checked to break out of this loop, right? So let's end this. We can end this here. All right, these things can be quite interesting. Right, so one last thing we can do is to get some outputs using a for loop. So let's do this really quick. Let's take a number from 1 and to 5 and then we can output the number and also output the square of the number, right? So square of a number is just a number multiplied by itself. So we have a start value. Let's do an end value. So say y is equal to, let's do 10 this time around, and let's say x, and then x is less than or equal to our y. Then we can do x plus plus, right? So we output this. All right, so before we do that, we can output a message saying number, and then we can have number squared, right? Then let's have some separator bar here, and we can enter our loop. We print out this. We can add some tab here, and then actually multiply the numbers together, which is going to be x times x, right? And we can do end line. So yeah, we have to take away this x plus plus from here. So let's run this, and we are expecting to have numbers through from 1 to 10 with their squares, right? So let's run this. And then we have the numbers being on this column, and then the number squared being on this column. So we have the square of 1 being 1, square of 2 being 4, and it goes all the way through to 10, which has a square of 100, right? So this will be it for this lesson. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.